Time for business news now on France 24. Shell Pellegrin is with us. He's starting in Azerbaijan. COP29 has just opened, in fact, in the last few moments. The UN chief there saying COP29 must show global climate cooperation, not down for the count. And it's open with climate finance at the top of the agenda, hasn't it, Charles?
That's right, in Azerbaijan, not Abidjan, just to be
Azerbaijan, I can't read.
And climate finance, especially when it comes to the world's developing economies, this means finding the monetary resources to fund the transition to green energy and away from fossil fuels, and to build up developing countries' resilience to withstand extreme weather events brought on by climate change. And these needs are enormous. The independent high-level expert group on climate finance has calculated that developing countries, excluding China, will need $2.4 trillion per year by 2030. Close to half of this would come from these countries' existing budgets and investments from their domestic private sectors. The other half would come from what is referred to as international climate finance.
So what does that term refer to then, Sean?
It refers to a host of different sources of financing, but a large chunk of this is called in the COP lingo, the new collective quantified goal on climate finance. And that's the most contentious issue in the talks that will be taking place over the next 2 weeks. That's the 2015 Paris Agreement requirement that developed countries have to provide climate finance to the developing world on account of the fact that they've historically been the source of most carbon emissions. Developing countries are asking for these commitments to reach $1 to $1.4 trillion per year by 2035, but the developed world says not more than half of that sum can come from their own taxpayers. So this means other forms of financing have to come into play, notably expanding the lending capacity of what are called multilateral development banks, either the World Bank or the IMF, creating new forms of finance with taxes, for example, on wealth or fossil fuels, or calling on a private sector investment. So talks over the next fortnight will be discussing how to boost this financing. Currently, the only pledge that exists from developed economies dates back to over a decade ago, and it was to provide $100 billion a year starting in 2020. So at least 5 times more than that is needed, and it'll be an uphill struggle. That $100 billion pledge was only reached for the first time last year, so about 3 or 4 years late.
Okay, let's move now here to France. Farmers are struggling with a pest infestation. Might have something to do with climate change, so this.
Hazelnut farmers are experiencing unwanted visitors in the form of nut weevils and stink bugs in a warming environment that might make it easier for pests to reproduce. They're destroying tons of crops, and some farmers are saying they could go out of business if the problem keeps going. Morgan Eyre has this.
Sorting through boxes of hazelnuts, these employees are assessing the damage caused to their crop. On the right is what a healthy hazelnut looks like, and on the left it's speckled white, destroyed by insects, the nut weevil and the stink bug. This cooperative in the southwest of France says as a result of these pests, only 35% of their normal harvest is uncontaminated.
So for this 2024 harvest, we've had a production potential of 13,000 tonnes. Of these 13,000 tonnes, nut weevils destroyed 50%.
The stink bug is native to China, Japan and other parts of Asia. It recently established itself in Europe, mostly through the global trade and being transported on crates and pallets. Scientists say climate change could create a more favourable environment for pests to multiply. Some growers feel that French rules on certain pesticides are preventing them putting a stop to the problem. They also say they're losing out to other European competitors.
We have a French law that bans acetamiprid, an active ingredient that would enable us to fight these pests effectively. Our Italian counterparts, for example, have access to it, as do all other countries in the European Union. It's unfair competition.
Farmers are calling for a more even playing field across the EU when it comes to measures for dealing with plant health.
Morgan Eyre there. Onto the markets then, Charles. How are they doing?
Well, European stocks opening higher this Monday morning, as you're about to see. The CAC 40 up over 2/3% higher, making up some of the losses that happened last week on the wake of the U.S. economy. Also worth checking in on Bitcoin. The cryptocurrency has been riding new highs since Trump's victory. His second presidency expected to lead to a friendlier regulatory environment, currently trading at over $81,000 for a Bitcoin. It was under $70,000 before the results came in last week.
Now we're going to stay in the US. There are growing concerns over the independence of the Federal Reserve under a new Trump administration.
The Federal Reserve is America's central bank. It has a double mandate: price stability and job market health, both of which it tries to achieve via monetary policy, chiefly benchmark interest rate levels and bond purchases. Current chair Jerome Powell has held his position since 2018. He was appointed by then-President Donald Trump, who later took to blaming the Fed chief as the COVID pandemic hit the U.S. stock market. Trump now appears to be setting the stage for inserting himself into Fed decisions, garnering support from GOP lawmakers and even Elon Musk. Brian Quinn has the details.
A simple question with a simple answer.
If he asked you to leave, would you go?
No.
A complicated future to navigate as Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell tries to safeguard the traditional independence of America's central bank from Donald Trump. Trump appointed Powell as Fed chair in 2018, but as the COVID pandemic wreaked havoc on the U.S. economy and stock markets, Trump frequently lashed out at Powell in public. Over the summer, the now president-elect floated the idea of giving himself a say in Fed policy.
I made a lot of money. I was very successful, and I think I have a better instinct than, in many cases, people that would be on the Federal Reserve or the chairman.
Some Republicans are now calling for the Fed to be brought explicitly under the president's control, a view echoed on Friday by staunch Trump supporter Elon Musk. Under Powell, the Fed has pulled off one of the trickiest maneuvers in macroeconomic policy, the so-called soft landing, bringing down rampant inflation without causing a recession. The dangers of a central bank under the thumb of politicians have been proven in Turkey, where President Erdogan's highly unconventional belief that cutting interest rates should lower inflation saw inflation top 80% before Erdogan changed course. Trump has since softened his tone on dictating interest rates. Many, though, worry that even a running commentary from the president on Fed policy could still undermine confidence in the bank's ability to carry out its mandate.
That's it from me, Stuart.
Charles, thank you very much. Charles Pellegrin with Business on France 24. All the latest news coming up after the break, including our perspective guest. Can't bring you our press review today, I'm afraid, but do stay with us if you can.